Welcome to the Black Creator Series, brought to you by Candlewick Press in collaboration with Red Clay Educators. Hosted by Dr. Sonja Cherry-Paul, bringing dynamic books, authors, illustrators, and artists to your classroom and to the world. Look for episodes of the Black Creator Series on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Our guest creator this episode is debut author Monique James-Duncan, whose beautiful picture book, Mommy Time, is an ode to mothers, particularly the largely unseen African-American stay-at-home mother. Here's your host, New York Times best-selling author Dr. Sonja Cherry-Paul, founder of Red Clay Educators and co-founder of the Institute for Racial Equity in Literacy.
Hi, Monique. Welcome to the Black Creator Series.
Hi, Sonja. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So I wanted to ask, did you always want to be a writer? Was there a pivotal moment that helped you to see yourself that way?
No, I didn't always want to be a writer. I thought I was going to go into economics and finance and such, business and such. But then what happened was I became a stay-at-home mother. And I've been a stay-at-home mother for 15 years now. And at some point, I would say, when my daughter was about 2-3 years, I realized through my daughter that I wanted to be a writer. And that was a result of spending a phenomenal amount of time in the library. She's been reading since she was 3 years old, so she was consuming so many books. So having been surrounded by books and always reading books to her, I realized that I had to literally scour library shelves looking for representation. And that is where I said, oh, two things. I see stories that, stories coming up with myself, and my daughter. And I could do this. And then I remembered I used to write. I used to enjoy composition back in school. That was my favorite subject. And then just wanting to see more of her. And then when I had my son, more of him, more of my family. And it was a desperate and visceral feeling. And that's how I decided to write.
That is really quite powerful and just gives voice to the ways that children change us. And my daughter is a young adult, and I remember when she was little, taking her to the library, having a similar experience that you're describing right now. So that's very upsetting that it's still happening, right? And I remember at the time she could take out 25 books at a time, and we would grab them all and take them back to our apartment and spread them out on the carpet. And, most of those books were about animals. And every now and then we'd find some books that felt like mirrors, right? Where we could see each other and ourselves and how precious, those books were to us. So your bio that I was reading, one of the many interesting things about you, shares that you have lived in and you have roots in quite a few places in the world: Britain, the Commonwealth of Dominica, Barbados, Canada, and on several coasts of the United States. How does traveling inform your work as a writer? How do all of those experiences and all those different places show up maybe in, the way that you write?
Well, what I found is that when I first started traveling a lot more. Yes, I was born in Britain. Yes, I grew up in, but since I was 2.5, I grew up in the Caribbean, a predominantly Black country, Black leaders, Black people on your money, Black everything, right? And then I went to school in Canada, where I discovered while being in college that they did not learn Black history the way I learned Black history. And it was quite obvious from the way Black Canadians move through the world compared to, to persons like myself who had grown up in predominantly Black countries. And then I moved to the United States, where, again, unlike Canada, where it was all about the melting pot, here they sort of like said, okay, you are more, America, it was more, you are an individual who we sort of like come together. So individuality was stressed more. I don't know if it was stressed more, or as black people themselves were like, okay, you know what? We are our community. Asians, like, we are our community. So you see, it was sort of like a whole different take on Blackness moving through the world. And then in traveling throughout the world, through Asia and through India, and through South America and various places, I realized how much people did not understand the humanity of Black people. Mm. You know, I remember going through Cambodia and people pointing at me and people literally snickering and laughing. Seeing my husband and I, we didn't have children at the time, we were backpacking. And we seemed like this odd entity to them. I remember being in India where people would say, you know, do you want some, you know, they wanted me to buy stuff for my skin, to lighten my skin. And I'd be like, no, I'm fine with my skin. Or being in Vietnam where women covered themselves from head to toe, slippers with socks on, and it's hot, it is burning hot because they didn't want to get darker. Or their deodorant or their powder, all of that had to sell, it had to have that they were skin whitening agents, you know, in the product. So, and then another thing I discovered was that if people traveled more, there's also the positive part of it. People would understand, ultimately, people just want to take care of their families. That's all they want to do. They just want to take care of their families. They just want to take care of their children. And so we had that in common. So there was, you know, there was this whole, I remember this whole emotional take as I was traveling through the world. And when it came to my books, yes, I always think about how people saw me as I travel and live in these different places. Even, you know, going from New York to San Francisco and then living in Atlanta, living in the South is a very different experience from living in San Francisco and New York, right? So you have the South, but in the Black people, you have this sort of family unit and this Southern culture. Yes, ma'am. Yes, no, ma'am. And that sort of thing. And you have all these Black educational institutions down there. And it's absolutely lovely. I could have Black doctors and Black mechanics and Black dermatologists, Black everything down in Atlanta, which was so amazing. And I joined organizations like Mocha Moms, who had so many stay-at-home mothers, and where people didn't apologize for their Blackness, right? So yes, it affects how I want my children to be seen in the world, and how I want people to understand the humanity of my children and my family and my motherhood and my womanhood and such.
Let's talk about mommy time. I love this book so much.
Thank you.
One of the things that I love out of many things is the playful language that you've used. Wake up, sun's up, it's morning time, and we just love our mommy time. She drags us out of bedtime, then it's comb our bushy hair time, dressing time, breakfast time, pick up lunch, a tasty munch, and off sister goes to school time. And it just makes you want to read the words aloud. And I can imagine young children wanting to read along because of the rhythm, the repetition, and just the delightful word combinations that you have created here. How fun was it to literally play with language as you wrote this?
Okay, it was, how should I say? So let me just preface this with saying, I was taking my first writing course with Gotham writers. And that was the first book that I wrote at, I finished it at 4:00 in the morning because procrastination is the thief of time. And I had my class the next day. And the book just came to me about mommy time. And I think it maybe is because in the back of my mind, I always thought that I didn't see books that represented me as a mother, a stay-at-home mother with my child, who chose to literally and unapologetically give their time to their children. So those words came to me because around the premise of time and the lack of time that we've been afforded historically as the mammies and the nannies and the, well, your time should belong to everybody else and not to your families and not to your children and not to yourself, right? So that is where it just came to me in the form of poetry as well. And I don't know how one could say, you know, when something just sort of pours out of you organically, it came to me in rhythm, and it came to me in just knowing all the things that I gave to my daughter in a very organic way and natural way, and not even just what I gave to her, what she received from me every day. And that's how those words ended up on a sheet of paper, ended up in my class, ended up at Candlewick, and ended up in a book.
And I feel like, and, you know, I'm wondering, you know, what your thoughts are around this, of course, but, you know, your background and all of the places that you lived in and that are a part of you, that you are rooted in, you know, showing up in this language, right? The rhythms, the concept of time that you were just describing. Of course, your identity as a mother, right? I just see it as a coming together of all of the things that make you you, right?
Yes.
In this language. And the playfulness. I mean, it's just so delightful. And you said that this book was to really pay tribute to mothers, right? It is a love letter to Black mothers,
Yes.
whether they stay at home and work there, or to mothers who are working outside of the home as well as inside of it. I really feel like it's a love letter to Black mothers. And you describe yourself as a busy stay-at-home mother. What were you hoping to communicate to young readers about mothers, specifically Black mothers?
Well, I wanted that when a child opened this book, whether with their grown up or not, that they immediately identified with this sort of, how should I say, this tug that they feel in their heart and their mind for their grown up and what their grown up does for them. I was lucky enough to have an incredible illustrator, Ebony Glenn, who through my words could wonderfully put my words down on paper, you know, visually. So what I found in going out to book festivals or just to the children who find my book, when I see them read it, as soon as they open it, as soon as they see the cover, right away, you can see they feel that sensation. I remember this little boy at the Brooklyn Book Festival. He walked up, saw my book, and he goes to his mother. He watches it. I saw him do it almost in slow motion. He came up, watched the book. He just stood there, and then he turned to his mother without opening the book yet, and he says, "Get it. I want it." So I was like, okay. And it happens a lot with children. I want them to see, and the images, Dr. Sonja, they were very intentional, meaning that I have an image there of a mother breastfeeding. Mm-hmm. I asked that be put in because I saw so few books with mothers breastfeeding. I asked that they have a mother with a hijab because I wanted to represent diversity. So you see there are Asian parents in there. I have a father who's in there with his child. There's a Black dentist in there. There's a mother also too with vitiligo that Ebony put in there, actually, the illustrator. There's a father in there as well. At the beginning, at the end, he leaves to go to work and he comes back from work. So, but with all these images, it encompassed a Black family, right? And it encompassed a Black mother. So therefore, no matter what race or background you have, this is how you see a mother being humanized intentionally, a Black mother being humanized intentionally for everybody to see and unapologetically.
I just want to shout out again, Ebony Glenn. The art is just capturing everything you've just described. And I absolutely love the ways some Black illustrators, particularly Ebony Glenn, are amplifying Blackness with the art in their books, from the head bonnets to the multiple skin tones, the hair textures. In addition to everything that you just called out, I noticed as well. I mean, on the cover, you can see this like glowing highlight around the mother. I mean, it is just mirror upon mirror upon mirror for Black children. And it's all so very needed. And I want to talk to you a little bit about something you just said about humanizing Black mothers. And I read this thinking, almost, imagining you intentionally working in a way that disrupts negative portrayals of Black families with your beautiful portrayal of Black motherhood and Black families. And so I think this book serves as an incredibly powerful counter narrative to deficit perspectives about Black mothers and Black families. And I hope it becomes the narrative. So were you noticing anything about how Black families are portrayed?
Yes. So, I will say this here. So I remember when I had my son and I was actually sitting down breastfeeding him. He was on the breast and I had one hand on the computer right next to me on the couch, multitasking, going through Facebook. And I remember it was when the verdict came out for the Trayvon Martin case. And I remember when they came out and they said, basically, the criminal, the man who murdered Trayvon Martin had been free. And I said on Facebook, somebody said, well, that's what, God wanted. And I remember saying, I put, well, what kind of God would want this for this mother? Facebook took it off, by the way. So, but I came off Facebook for a number of years. As a matter of fact, I don't even go on Facebook that much. Yes, I do Instagram, which Facebook bought and all that sort of thing. So I had to go back on social media, but I left social media for a number of years because I just couldn't take the discussion about whether this boy was innocent or not innocent for going out and getting candy and minding his own business. Mm-hmm. And I thought of his mother a lot. And I thought of this Black boy that I was raising a lot. And I thought of the fact that once I found out I was pregnant with a boy, that the first thing I thought was wonderful and then quick. And then the next thing was, but will I be able to protect him? Mm. Will my husband and I be able to protect him, right? Mm. So therefore, this book, as wonderfully sweet as it is, it had to be an ode to Black motherhood because we are constantly dealing with the fear for our children, not just for our boys, for also our girls, right? So I needed this book to show everybody, to teach everybody that we are people, we are human beings. We love our children just like everybody else. It's not these things that you see all the time with us on reality TV, and carrying on. That is reality TV. That's a show. Mm-hmm. And even if we did that, so what? We're still people who love our children, right? And this is what this book is intentionally showing.
Mm.
That it is about changing the narrative of how we are seen as Black families and Black motherhood in general, as Black mothers.
Thank you for that very important work. So, what's next for you, Monique? Is there anything that you can share that we can look forward to?
Yes, I am in an MFA program right now. So I'm doing my a master's in creative writing at the New School. And in doing that, I am doing a lot of intentional work. I'm writing a YA novel, I'm writing some other books. And I have a book out there right now, which is around the whole concept of not seeing color.
Mm.
And so we'll see how that goes. And I am moving forward with writing books that are intentionally focused on Blackness.
Mm.
And I know I use that word constantly, humanize, but again, I don't mind using that word because I feel that as I go through the world and see how Blackness is looked upon, I just want to constantly, like writers like Jacqueline Woodson and such, I want to continuously and intentionally write books that represent Black lives and showing that, we simply want to, again, just live our lives in peace and create images for our sons, our daughters, and our mothers and our fathers.
Monique, multicultural education scholar Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop created and theorized about a beautiful metaphor about books that has become commonly quoted, right? Mirrors, windows, and sliding glass doors. And as she theorizes about this metaphor, she clearly names that it is Black children, right? Black and brown children who are often looking for mirrors in books and often finding that search futile. On your website, you've shared the experience of scouring through library shelves that you talked about today, and realizing the urgent need for your two children to always know they are seen. And therefore, you are passionate about writing literature with representation and mirrors. What does it mean to you to be a Black creator?
Being a Black creator is a heavyweight. Because being a Black creator, I think, comes with a phenomenal responsibility. You have to be very, very aware and very careful about the information that you put out there into the world. I would say that as a Black creator, there is a uniqueness that we bring to the table, which is why I try to surround myself with Black art, Black literature. I try to put myself into organizations that represent Blackness. Even when I was at a predominantly white school for my children for elementary school, I became heavily involved and actually chaired the No Place for Hate book club. And what that was to make sure that you bring in Black authors into the school so that the Black children there can see mirrors, but also too, the other children can see as well, because it's not always just all about us, right? It's what we as Black creators put out there into the world is how will help in how other people see us. So I had people like Vashti Harrison, Vanessa Bradley Newton come visit the school, and their work was so well received. So being a Black creator, again, it was very intentional that I went after Vashti Harrison. It was very intentional that I went after Vanessa Bradley Newton and Ruth Chan, who's a wonderful Asian writer, so that children can see mirrors of themselves. So yes, I would say as a Black creator, a heavyweight, but one that, although challenging, is the most beautiful thing. And I'm happy. I happily take on the mantra of being one.
Thank you, Monique. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, the pleasure's been mine, for sure.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Black Creators Series, a Candlewick Press and Red Clay Educators collaboration. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notifications button so you won't miss an episode. For more information about the Black Creators Series, go to blackcreatorseries.candlewick.com or sonjacherrypaul.com, or go to Red Clay Ed on Twitter and Instagram.